There is a version of you that has been dead for 50,000 years, and yet somehow, it is still making your decisions today. Not metaphorically, biologically, chemically, quietly. Right now, as you sit wherever you're sitting, a survival system built in an ice age is quietly running in the background of your body, making judgment calls about food, about movement, about rest, all based on a world that no longer exists. Here is the strange, quiet part. That system was never broken. It was never lazy. It was, in fact, one of the most successful pieces of engineering evolution has ever produced. And that success is exactly why it's now working against us. We tend to picture our ancient ancestors as the gold standard of human fitness. Lean, muscular, enduring. We imagine them running down animals across open plains, chiseled by a life of constant motion, and we tell ourselves a simple story. They moved more, so they weighed less. Burn more, store less. Case closed. Except when researchers actually went out into the world and measured this directly, strapping monitors onto communities still living something close to that ancestral rhythm, walking miles a day, hunting, digging, climbing. The numbers refused to cooperate. These groups were active, remarkably so. But their total daily energy expenditure, the actual number of calories burned across a full day, turned out to be nearly identical to an office worker sitting at a desk in a modern city, a person walking 10 miles, carrying firewood, climbing for food, burning roughly the same total energy as someone who drives to work and sits still for 8 hours. That single, strange finding quietly rewrote everything we thought we understood about ancient bodies, because it means our ancestors weren't lean simply because they were more athletic than us. It means something else entirely. For a long time, this idea seemed almost impossible to accept. We are taught, from childhood, that the body works like simple arithmetic. Move more, burn more. Eat less, weigh less. A ledger, balanced in real time, with no hidden variables. But biology has never actually worked that cleanly. Somewhere deep in our evolutionary past, the body learned a harder lesson. That energy is precious, unpredictable, and never guaranteed to arrive on schedule. And a system that spends without limit, in a world defined by scarcity, does not survive long enough to pass its genes forward. The human body, it turns out, does not work like a simple machine, where more movement always equals more calories burned, without limit. It behaves more like a tightly managed budget, a fixed amount of energy, shuffled and reshuffled internally, no matter how hard you push against it. When physical activity increases, the body quietly pulls energy away from somewhere else to compensate. Inflammation, stress hormones, other internal processes, to keep the total roughly the same. Scientists call this constrained energy expenditure. Your body isn't an engine that burns more fuel the harder you drive it. It's closer to a thermostat, holding the room at nearly the same temperature no matter how hard the wind blows outside. So if constant movement wasn't the reason our ancestors stayed lean, what was? The answer isn't found in what they were doing. It's found in what they simply couldn't do. They couldn't overeat, because there was nothing to overeat. No refrigerator humming quietly in the corner of the room. No glowing sign on the corner. Open at midnight, selling food engineered to be almost impossible to stop eating. If the hunt failed, it failed. If the season was lean, it stayed lean. There was no surplus waiting in reserve. And in a world like that, evolution did what it always does. It rewarded whichever bodies were best equipped to survive scarcity. Not the leanest by our modern standards, but the most efficient hoarders. The ones who could take a rare, calorie-dense feast and convert as much of it as possible into stored fat, ready to be slowly released through the next famine, the next hard winter, the next failed hunt. Today we call this the Thrifty Biology Hypothesis, and it points to something quietly enormous. The very trait that once kept our ancestors alive through droughts and famines and long, uncertain winters, a powerful drive to seek out calorie-dense food, and an efficient system for storing it as fat, is not some flaw hiding inside modern human beings. It is the system, working exactly as it was designed to. For nearly the entire existence of our species, that thrifty biology was a quiet gift, refined across hundreds of thousands of generations of scarcity. Then, within the span of a single human lifetime, a blink, on an evolutionary timescale, the world around that biology transformed almost beyond recognition. Food stopped being scarce. It became endless. Available at every hour of the day, on every street corner, delivered to a doorstep in under 30 minutes, without a person even having to stand up. Foods designed, quite literally, in test kitchens, engineered down to the precise combination of fat, sugar, and salt that an ancient brain reads as the single most valuable calorie source it has ever encountered. Eat this. Store this. This might be the difference between surviving winter and not. At the very same time, the world stopped asking anything physical of the body at all. No walking for water. No climbing for food. No carrying. No digging. No chasing anything across open ground. Elevators replaced stairs. Cars replaced walking. Chairs were built for 8, 10, 12 hours at a stretch. The thrifty body, sculpted across 100,000 generations to survive scarcity, was suddenly placed inside a world of permanent abundance and near total stillness. Nobody told it the famine was over. No signal was ever sent. No switch was ever flipped. The body simply woke up one generation to find itself surrounded by more food than it could ever need, and reacted the only way it knew how, the same way it had reacted for hundreds of thousands of years before a single supermarket ever existed. It still hoards energy whenever it can. It still craves calorie-dense food at the first opportunity. It still tries to conserve movement wherever possible, because for nearly the entire history of our species, that single instinct was the difference between living to see the next season and not. This is the quiet, invisible trap sitting at the center of modern life. Not weakness, not a lack of willpower, a 500,000-year-old survival algorithm, still running exactly as intended, inside an environment it was never built to face. So if it was never really about movement alone, what actually kept our ancestors lean? It wasn't discipline. It wasn't restraint, in the way we understand it today. It was an environment where overeating simply wasn't an option, where every single calorie had to be earned through effort, uncertainty, and risk, and where tomorrow's meal was never guaranteed. That environment is, for most of the world, essentially gone now, and no amount of guilt, or blame, or willpower alone can undo 500,000 years of careful evolutionary programming in the space of one lifetime. But understanding why the body behaves this way changes the entire shape of the problem. This was never the story of a species falling apart under modern conditions. It is the story of a remarkably intelligent survival system, still faithfully doing its job, inside a world that no longer requires it. The thrifty body is not an enemy hiding inside you. It is a message, carried forward from every ancestor who ever went hungry, so that you would never have to. The real question was never how to defeat that ancient system. It's how to finally build it a world it can learn to trust again. One where movement is woven back into the rhythm of daily life, instead of scheduled around it in stolen hours. And where abundance no longer feels like something to hoard against, but something safe enough, finally, to relax into. Somewhere, encoded quietly in the oldest parts of your biology, someone is still waiting by a frozen river for a fish that may never come. And somewhere inside you, right now, quietly, patiently, some small, ancient part of you is still waiting there too, still cautious, still hungry, still trying, in its own faithful way, to keep you alive.